Hey, welcome to the Attractions Group podcast. Today we have a very exciting interview with John Dunlap where we're going to talk about all things FEC related, talk about the history of his company, of which he is the CEO, Five Star Parks and Attractions, and we got some other fun, newsworthy topics to get into from around the attractions industry. Welcome to the Attractions Group podcast. Hello, David.
Hey.
The Reds have won 8 out of their last 10 games.
In 9 of the last 12, I hear. In finally making a move towards, I don't know, is this, I hope it's not a mirage. They do have a very tough stretch. They seem to have done well against the hard teams. It's the easy teams they have the problem with.
Yeah.
So
it's exactly.
They seem to be doing, I don't know why that is, but last night it was a back and forth game, and the right team came out on top at the end.
Yes, that's right. Well, and we did have a really easy schedule in the month of May, and so I kept hearing people saying the Reds need to win now if they're gonna. I was like, you don't know the Reds if you think they need to win now. Clearly we're gonna play better when we're playing the Twins and the Tigers. Yes. So okay, exciting. So how's it going? How's are the locusts still swarming, or are they mostly
the locusts, the cicadas?
Oh
no, they're actually starting to die off.
Good.
We were coming home from being somewhere yesterday, and my wife got out of the car and she bumped into a tree. We'll just say she bumped into one of the decorator trees on our street.
Okay, right.
And I thought that the cicadas were kind of on the downside, and they are. But when she bumped into the tree and it shook it a little bit, they all emerged.
Oh, that's great.
It was one of the funnier things because that I'd seen, because she turned around and she saw these things buzzing around, and she didn't quite run. She didn't run off like I thought she would, but yeah, they're still around. They're definitely on the downside, and I guess it's going to be another 2 years. I guess there's another brood going to come out in 2 years. It's like the special moons. It used to be once in a blue moon, actually a thing, where it seemed like every once in a blue moon you have these special things in the moons, or cicadas for this matter. Now it seems like every time you turn around there's a blood moon, whatever moon showing up. And I thought cicadas were every 17 years. No, we're having them again in 2 years. So I don't know how this all works. But I do have a question for you.
Okay.
Can you explain has never been cold? What does that mean?
I've never been cold. I don't feel that. I don't know what
really
it means to be cold.
You're from Ohio, 21 degrees below zero. You've never been cold.
I wear shorts and a t-shirt and I feel great.
Okay.
It's currently probably inside where I'm at right now, probably like 72 degrees, and I am just on fire. I'm just at my perfect temperature is 48 with a breeze and with shorts on. But I moved to Florida, so I guess I did it to myself.
Yeah, you like air conditioning then. So, but then
Yes.
The question is, have you ever been hot?
Every second of every day. Yes,
Okay.
Yes, I've been hot. I mean, it's fine. Like, I get over it, but yes, I get hot easily. But never cold. So wait, you can't ask me and then not add 3 cups of water and stir. That seems like what when I eat oatmeal in the morning, when I read on my package. What is going on here?
Oh, but there's an extra step if you do the oatmeal, because it doesn't mix together unless you put it in the microwave or pour hot water. So, in 3 cups of water, let's be honest, unless you're making a lot of oatmeal for a lot of people, you're not going to use 3 cups.
Okay,
what does that mean? I have no idea. I'm just helping somebody out that may have a recipe going right now, and they need to figure out why their stuff is so dry. I'm just saying, add 3 cups of water and stir.
Yeah, that's true. There's certainly circumstances under which that's great advice, but they're all escaping me. So,
and that could actually help you if you're never cold but you're always hot. 3 cups of water.
Yeah, true. You're right. Absolutely. You're absolutely right. Okay, so we got to get into some little news tidbits here, because there's a lot of them.
It has been extraordinarily newsworthy week.
Yes,
there's been a lot of news this week.
Yes. I think that can kind of happen sometimes, though, too, in the parks industry, where it's like somebody says something and they're like, "Oh, we went in on the fun," and it kind of sometimes spirals out of control. So what's going on this week? Well, let me start out by saying I work at Walt Disney World. I'm a cast member, but I'm not in any way speaking on behalf of the company when I say this. But as we have seen, Epcot Test Track is returning, which is very exciting. It's going to be on July 22nd, which is really somehow it feels like June 1st, but is actually June 18th. So this is in about a month, not two, like it feels like. But yes, so the new and improved, reimagined, redesigned Test Track. We don't really know what the differences are gonna be. We do know that it's still Test Track at the end of the day. That's still the
Mm-hmm.
name. That's it's a classic Walt Disney World extended refurbishment where it's going to be better and new, but it's going to keep its soul. And it's still Chevrolet as well, that was up in the air if it was going to be
Mm-hmm.
General Motors as the sponsor of that ride or if it wasn't going to have a sponsor or what. But we do know that it does, and it is going to be General Motors. But besides that, it's a mystery. So I'm excited.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, though, the ride experience was largely the same for quite a while,
Yeah.
and because we happened to get on the ride between a couple different closures they had one night we were at Epcot, I don't know, a year and a half ago,
Mhm.
and whenever it was, and it seemed to me, and it had been a number of years before we'd been on it since then, or since that time, but the ride experience was largely the same because you get into the car, it's just open, big convertible car, and you go around the track and you come back based on whatever you may have designed in the line.
Yeah.
And so, if I'm not mistaken, that's pretty much that experience is going to be only lightly resemble what it was before.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure there will be just from like the perspective of the actual state of the like car world right now, I'm sure
Mm-hmm.
that part of things will be
Yeah.
completely shifted. And like we're still going to have the fast parts of the ride. It's still going to be a thrilling experience in addition to an immersive one, but the balance might be different than it used to be. It'll be exciting to see. Now, before I don't want to get too far deep into just this one thing, but I will mention Epcot. This is going to be so good for the. I love Epcot. Okay, it is my favorite of the four parks in Walt Disney World, but it does have this problem where there just aren't that many attractions, and because of that, their total net hourly capacity is not through the roof. But with Test Track coming back, it is going to be
Mm-hmm.
substantially aided. So I'm very excited just for normal days at Epcot, with like Frozen's line being 10 minutes shorter because people will be ate up in the line for Test Track. So that's going to
Yeah,
be
10 minutes shorter out of the what is it normally, like 240 minutes? So,
good.
yay, 230 minutes, whatever it is. Probably not that much.
Yes,
But
yes. In
so
December, that
since you're
much.
since you're talking about Disney, I'll just hop on over to the other side of the I-4 and talk about Universal for a second. Now, they
Mm-hmm.
put out a news release the other day. I don't know if it's a news release, it happened to be a news item, that they are going to be reviving the Friday the 13th Frightful Maze for Halloween Horror Nights this year. Now, I think the last Friday the 13th movie came out like long after you were watching movies. I don't know if you've ever seen any of them, but I can say that growing up, going through high school, going through college, and even some of the last number of years, I've seen all the Friday the 13th movies, and I'm in my 50s, and that stupid hockey mask still terrifies me to this day. And the very fact that they are bringing this back is that a maze. Now, I go to different haunt events. I've been through different mazes, and quite honestly, basically the way of scaring for the most part is they just yell up, come up, they scream at you, which is going to startle anybody. But I tell you what, if I go to one of these mazes and I happen to come across some actor, some animatronic, whatever it may be, with that hockey mask on it, it'll terrify me for weeks. Now I look at some of the haunt advertisements and I'll kind of stuff like, yeah, I'm not going to waste my time staying in line for that. I don't even know if I'd waste time staying in line for this because I know what the outcome is going to be. No matter how good or how bad they do it, all I'm going to see is that stupid hockey mask behind every corner when it's dark out.
Yeah, you're gonna see your life flash before your eyes twice a day.
Yeah, right before the hatchet comes at your neck. That, as I understand, is coming to both the Universal parks in Orlando and Hollywood.
Okay. Cool.
When does Halloween Horror Nights start? That starts in August, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, the 20 something or other. I don't know if the dates are even
Okay.
announced for this year, but they might be. So somebody tell me I'm wrong in the comments. Um, I do think IP is like a completely broken advantage to have when you're doing horror. That's next level
Mhm.
scares when you have characters that people are already afraid of. That's huge advantage compared to the haunts and the Fright Fest. So I do give the haunts and Fright Fest a little slack because they don't have the same IP power. But next up, though, Dollywood. Let's talk about Dollywood for a moment.
Yes.
They are spending $50 million apparently on a new indoor attraction, which to me has to be a roller coaster. There was the rumors about Dollywood soaring above the tree line. People thought maybe it would be a flying coaster or something like this. Now we know it's indoor, so that's going to be interesting. But I think that if we're talking about a ride or an experience of any kind of this caliber, just purely financially, I'm thinking it's got to be a roller coaster. But I'm excited to see what the theme is, where it is. I don't know. I'm
Mhm.
excited to see that's expensive, even for
Yes.
a big park like Dollywood. That's a big investment, whatever it's going to be.
It is a big investment, and in Hershon, not too long ago, took on some a couple more parks, so they expanded. They're in an expansionary mode, and quite
I guess so.
honestly, it, what this in the article that we have, we'll post the links to it online, is that their vice president of marketing and public relations has said it's an opportunity for us to do something no one's ever done before. I like
Mm.
that. Number one, that's creativity, and number two, including have an attraction that'll help us extend our season. So, a couple of foreshadowings there, something no
Yeah,
one's done before, and hopefully they may be extending their season a little further than what they currently have.
yeah, that's
Which
cool
is
too.
nice because we're in an area where some of the parks are contracting a little bit, but we have a couple instances where that's not the case.
Yeah, I mean, Holiday World's expanding their hours. Kennywood's
Hmm.
expanding their hours. Which, speaking of which,
Speaking of which, Kennywood
yeah,
is extending their hours, and they're operating hours, and they're adding a drone show. So it in the article, and again we'll post these online. Kennywood is adding new hours as it kicks off 9 nights of drone shows from July 11th, beginning on July 11th. The park will be open from until 10 p.m. From that date until July 19th. And they'll also be doing a drone show with 300 drones illuminating the sky above the lagoon. So it says they'll have choreographed light patterns and anything else on here with the park's iconic logos, rides, and characters.
nice.
So it's great news.
Now,
There's still some parks I'm not going to point out ones that are, but there's some that are they're pulling back a little bit, and so that can be expected because it seems like 2024 and 2025 have been a little bit of contraction years as far as attendance at parks are concerned. So that's understandable. But there are some very good instances where we can point to of parks to see this as an opportunity to expand further or
yeah,
expand
for sure.
out.
And that's another new Hershend on the move on the
Yes.
so how exciting. Is Kings Island, they had a phenomenal drone show in 2022 that they did every night. Are they still doing the drone shows this year?
They do a drone show. It has the park logo. It has the attractions, different roller coasters, their logos. They've done a
Yeah,
number of things. I don't believe they're. I think outside of the logos, I don't think there's. I could be wrong. I've seen a number of times. I should know this, but I know like last year they had their iconic purple ice cream cone that they did up in the sky.
nice.
I don't believe that's there this year.
Okay.
I should know that, but I don't. But
Yeah.
I believe outside of just the park logo itself and the logo of the attractions, I believe that's it. But they do have
Okay.
a new song again this year, a new score that they have the fireworks and the drone show choreographed to.
That's cool. Yeah, it's always good to see little changes here and there, just so you're not watching the same thing year
Yeah.
after year.
Now I will say from what you mentioned with the drone show and the fireworks display they did in
Mm,
2022 for their 50th
yeah.
anniversary, that's that will be a tough one to top pretty much ever. That
Yeah.
they're firing
I'm
on all
with you.
cylinders that year.
Yeah. And rightfully so. For the 50th anniversary, I mean, it was a big deal, and they knocked it out of the park.
Right, they did. They absolutely.
Yeah.
So, have a quick update on some things from IAPA. and which is number one. The registration for the expo in November is live, so the earliest that the registration fee will be right now. I believe they raise it right after Labor Day. I could be wrong on that, but that's when it generally runs through, the early bird special they call it. But also there have been a number of downsizing, layoffs, and people have been let go for various contractions over the industry over the last couple of months. And this is a great offer that IAP has put out there. And I'm just going to read it directly from their press release. It says, for members who have lost access to IAPA resources due to recent layoffs and restructuring, we're offering a complimentary individual membership good through 2025 to help you stay connected to the global attractions industry. And resources that they have available, of course, are the IAPA job board with the current opportunities that are throughout the industry, not necessarily maybe with IAPA, but also with parks that post things on there, professional development tools, and just a way to stay connected through different various events that they may have for networking or educational resources that they have. So that's a great offer that they have going forward. And any year that every year anyone can be subject to any kind of restructuring or downsizing. It's not just the summer; it's every summer. But what they've rolled out this year, and I have to say, if you go on LinkedIn, the various communities within professional communities within the attractions industry, when some of these announcements are made, just a number of individuals, organizations, I've seen more job postings in within the attractions industry through all this than probably any other time. And the networking that people are able to do, I've connected some people to, yeah, I don't have any jobs that I offer, but I know people that may have, or people that will say they know where the bodies are buried, so to speak. And I've been able to connect a number of people within my connection base to people who know. I don't know anybody directly or of a position, but I can refer them to someone else. And to those
Yeah.
people, you know who you are. Thank you very much. It's been very much appreciated, not just by the people that are looking for situations when they've been downsized or restructured, but for me also because I referred them to. And it's always nice to know that you can refer somebody and they get a benefit from it. So it's, you see the worst of times and the best of times pretty much all at the same time.
Yeah, that's cool. Cool to see people come together. So I do have a question for you.
Oh boy,
And this is, I did not let you prepare for this, so I'm sorry. But
you didn't.
out of every park that you've been to,
Okay.
eh, which park, or maybe a park you haven't been to, but you can just, it would be kind of hard to answer. You'll see. Let me just get through the question.
Okay.
Which
Rip the
park
band
do
down.
you think? Right. Which park do you think is the most underappreciated in the general dialogue about parks
Oh
in the US? A park
boy.
that maybe it's not you're saying, I think this is the best park. That's not what you're saying. You're just saying this is the one that I don't think people talk about the way that they should.
Hmm. Yeah, that is a tough one. I would like to a little bit prepare on that because I may need to. Can I phone a friend? Or maybe this becomes a two-way conversation. I have a question for you, but maybe I can bounce this back to you. I would
Okay.
honestly say that a lot of it would be some of the local parks that have a lot of history to it and a lot of just a backstory to it. One of the ones I would think of, and it's probably appreciated, but maybe not as attended as it should be. Kennywood would be one of those
Mm,
because Kennywood has a lot of history. It's tied in very much to the Pittsburgh community, but at the same time,
yeah.
it's iconic. It is very iconic, and for a smaller park, which I mean, it's not small. I shouldn't say that, but I'd say mid-sized.
Yeah.
They have a lot of iconic roller coasters. It's some new innovations, some things that they've done that I think a lot of people hold places like Kennywood up in high esteems, even though they may not have visited it. And
Yeah.
if those are one of those things that you really feel like you should visit them. I mean, I understand that Pittsburgh's not necessarily on the beaten path for a lot of people. It's here, same here in Cincinnati. We're on flyover country. People are either going to California, they're going to Chicago, they're going to Florida. Not many people are planning months in advance to go to a place like Cincinnati or Pittsburgh. So I would say those historic local parks
Yeah.
that would be some of the underappreciated, and put a big broad brush under that to stroke that with. And also I think additionally places like the the former Coney Island here in Cincinnati before it finally came to an end last year. Very iconic location.
Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's not there for visiting anymore.
Yeah. Sad. But yes,
So how about you?
truly a great place. I actually, and I'm a little apprehensive to say this, but I'm going to say SeaWorld Orlando. I
Okay.
think SeaWorld Orlando is. I mean, people like it. Don't get me wrong. It's not a forgotten park, but I do think SeaWorld Orlando should be talked about like how people talk about Busch Gardens Tampa. Like there was a time, in 2018, I first went to SeaWorld and I went to Busch Gardens that trip too. Yeah, December 2018. Like then Busch Gardens Tampa was way better than SeaWorld Orlando. And I
Hmm.
think sometimes in the dialogue, people are still stuck there because, you know, SeaWorld Orlando was a marine park, obviously. And
Right.
then things changed. 2004, Blackfish happens, and the whole
Hmm.
SeaWorld company redirects itself. Right. And so they have to remove a lot of these marine attractions to make space for the ones that they do have, more or less, to expand the size of their tanks and things like this. And then they also say we want to switch ourselves from becoming a marine
Hmm.
park to a marine themed theme park. And
Right.
that was a process. And there was a time in the middle, like 2018, where SeaWorld was kind of neither. They were trying to be both, but they were
Right.
just kind of neither because they were in a transition phase. And Busch Gardens was an active theme park with 10 coasters and all these great things. But that's not where we are now. The, SeaWorld Orlando in particular has a full lineup of coasters, a full lineup of kids attractions,
Hmm.
family attractions, water rides, entertainment too. Like you think about the entertainment, it's just going to be like animal shows, that sort of a thing. It's not. I just went yesterday and saw this new Surge light show that they do. It was amazing. It was fantastic. So I think that the SeaWorld Orlando is a fully functional, firing on all cylinders theme park that like Expedition Odyssey. That's yes, it's still marine themed, but that's a Soarin' ride. Like it is a
Hmm.
flying theater on the same caliber as Soarin' is. And I think that's pretty cool. So yes, I'm thinking SeaWorld Orlando.
I could go. I could agree with you on that. I've been there. Probably the most recent I've been there was 22 or 23. One of this,
Mm.
probably 23. And I mean the roller coaster lineup, the B and M they have.
Mako
What's the name of that one?
is the
Mako.
hyper. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good layout. It's so much different than any other roller coasters of that type that I've been on. It has some different elements in it that you
Hmm.
don't see on some of the others, which is really not. I like it when people do an experience where you can't get somewhere else,
Yeah.
and that's what Mako does. Now, I would say we're talking about this. I had no prep time for it. The flying coaster. What's that called?
Manta.
Manta. That is so much better than the Flying Dutchmans that are out there. Just I
Oh
feel
yeah.
a lot more secure. I like the little splashdown that they, well, not splashdown, but that they have in
Yeah.
mid course. Now I will say one of the times I rode that, we something was going on in the station and we were still on the brake run,
Mm.
which you're still hanging upside,
Oh
well, not
yeah.
upside down, but you're hanging. And we
Yeah.
were there. I think they were helping somebody who needed some assistance getting off the roller coaster. So it took a little while. And so at that point, there's no really nowhere for us to go. And when I got when I we finally got into the station and they lowered us back down, all of a sudden all that blood is rushing out, and you have
Yeah.
to take a little bit of a hop to get out of the seat onto the platform. And how they have a little divot underneath there
Uh
so
huh.
you can swoop under. I stumbled a little bit and I started falling back, and all these ride operators around to like swarm me, trying to, oh, are you okay? Okay, do you need us to call somebody? They're firing all these questions at me, and before I could, which was great. I mean, they're
Yeah.
full
Yeah.
service. They want to make sure that no one gets hurt. At the same time, I'm trying to, no, I'm fine. I'm trying to get away from you, and they're like trying to walk me out. And I'm thinking, no, just go away. But yeah, the roller coaster lineup that they have there is really great because there's really nothing to compete. Even Universal and Disney, their roller
Yeah.
coaster experiences don't. They're in the same in different different floors of the same building. We'll call it that.
Yeah, yeah, right, exactly. That's a good way to put it. It's not they're not even trying to accomplish the
Right.
same task, really.
Right.
Yeah, that's cool. I will say though, it is a lot better. Speaking of the Dutchman, if you are stuck on the brake run of a B&M Flyer, at least you're not getting eaten alive by the sun like you would be on
Yeah.
the brake run of a Vekoma Flying Dutchman. Whew, those were the hottest moment in all of Kings Island used to be Firehawk's Lift Hill.
Yeah. Well, Cleet, this week we have an interview with someone who has got a very extensive experience in the industry. He's been with zoos, he's been with parks, SeaWorld, he's been with family entertainment centers, and right now he has been overseeing one of the largest expansions of any family entertainment center company I've seen. And he was their inaugural CEO a couple years ago. I believe it was 2022, but we'll let him get into that. His name is John Dunlap, and he is CEO of Five Star Parks and Attractions. John, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Right. So, John, thanks for coming on. We appreciate it. And yeah, look forward to getting into all the things that you have to talk about with regards to Five Star and your background. So, leading off, you want to get us up to speed as to what your background is and what has brought you to where you're at.
You bet. Yeah, I mean, from an early age, I've loved hospitality, and so I started my career at Starwood Hotels and Resorts, working in and around. First of all, started on the quality improvement side. So, if you've heard of Six Sigma for Starwood in its early days, then moving into operations. Decided to go back to business school, and when I was in business school, I was recruited to lead the world famous San Diego Zoo. Which is an interesting story in and of itself. I thought at first when I talked to the recruiter that they had the wrong number, calling a hotel guy. I don't think I even had any clothes in my wardrobe that were not suits and ties at the time. So it was a really fun change. But I got hooked. It's really hooked me in the attractions industry. I spent 5 years as director of the San Diego Zoo. And then I had an opportunity to make a financial investment in a park in Miami called Jungle Island, which I was really involved with that for about 5 years. So it continued my love of the zoological attractions. Later propelled me to do a couple of projects, international projects, including working on the Dubai Safari Park. As you mentioned before, a stint as president of the West Coast for SeaWorld. And then Five Star, hooked up with a couple of tremendous private equity guys who had an inspiring vision to consolidate the large format family entertainment center business. And the rest is history. We've grown the business from really our first acquisition in Branson, Missouri, of 3 parks to now 28 parks as of Monday. We just opened a new park in Dallas, 3 licensed parks, and then we're building a new licensed park with a development partner. So really exciting path, and love the attractions business, and look forward to chatting with you guys about it.
Something catches my eye because you took over SeaWorld parks in San Diego at a really challenging time, April 2021. Now, I know that Disney made big news because they didn't open for about a year after they closed for the pandemic. When did SeaWorld reopen their parks there in California?
Yeah, we opened our parks really in the summer of 2021, I believe, right?
Okay,
So
so you oversaw everything coming back online.
I did, yes.
So,
There's a lot to talk about there. I tell you, it was a really looking back on it, it was a tremendous experience, and I'm glad I had the opportunity to do that. But it was really challenging. I mean, it was a really challenging period of time, as you can imagine, and really particularly challenging to be in the state of California, which was one of the last states to truly open.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I imagine that you go there April 2021 and you don't reopen for several months later. That's got to be challenging because you're hired to, and all the pressure that goes into being a CEO of a park anyway, or president of a park. Now all of a sudden you have to walk through the park that has empty turnstiles, empty aisleways, empty everything for 3 months, and you got to be thinking, how are we going to turn this ship around once we get opened up? If you don't mind, what sort of challenges were included with that you had to overcome? Because there's no book that trained you for this. There's no
That's right.
textbook. I'm sure textbooks are written now, but there wasn't then.
I was going to say you have to drive on empty streets to an empty park with empty turnstiles, right? Because it was, and so trying to even think about what it might be like to start hiring again, it was unbelievable. I mean, we have thousands and thousands and thousands of employees, especially at peak, and so having, if you want to hire 4,000 employees, at a time when people would agree to show up for an interview but wouldn't show up. So we were literally like 10 to 1. So just do that math. You had to schedule 40,000 interviews ultimately to be able to get 4,000 people to show up. To be able to hire, in that case, many cases, it was like almost everyone who showed up. Right. We got to the point now where we were, pre-qualifying people online with a series of questions, and if ultimately they met all job requirements, we'd say show up and we'll place you somewhere in the park. I mean, it was that tumultuous. So I haven't run the numbers of how many people we interviewed to get to how many people who we hired, and then how many people we had to rehire from people who should have washed out. But it was it was an experience that I hope certainly I'll never have to experience in my lifetime. Especially, when you think of an organization like SeaWorld California, which has so much history. You virtually lose the culture in a day, right?
Easily.
Because you have to hire everyone back. And there are very, very few people. I mean, I would say 5% of the workforce who worked there before the pandemic. And so you're
That's changing.
teach everybody what it means like to be a SeaWorld employee. So pretty unbelievable.
Once things did start to open back up, was there still this like general apprehension about actually getting out and going to the park, or was it more of an eagerness to get back to the park once it did open up?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think a bit of both, right? I would be disingenuous if I told you that even on a very busy day where the park is at, very full, because remember, we weren't able to just open to like general tickets.
Right.
We were scheduling appointments, right? You would pick the hour that you were going to show up and book a 3 p.m. arrival and show up and have your ticket. I mean, it was just an amazing transformation of the business. But at times the park still would be quite full. And we were trying to be able to social distance in our stadiums, in our roller coaster lines. And no matter how much social distancing, when you dump a stadium, even if it's half capacity, it's a lot of people. And now, I can tell you it was all hands on deck. Every leader in that park was working in operations. We were stocking, sodas in the coolers. We were running food because we just really didn't have enough bandwidth for call offs and things like that. So it meant that I was working in the park most of the day, trying to fill in where I could. And I myself was apprehensive because, we still had 25% of everybody in the park wearing we still had, and all of our employees had masks as mandatory. So I mean, it still hadn't all gone away. It hadn't shaken out. We were not, I would say, landing the plane as it related to COVID in terms of vaccinations, et cetera. So it was still a tumultuous time.
Yeah. It would have been horrible because you're trying to manage not just people, but you're also managing the guest experience, which
that's right.
Guest experience is just because at least at that point, I know when things opened up here in Cincinnati, which is a little bit later on in the summer of 2020, I believe might have been right before, right after July 11th, I think is when Kings Island came back online.
That is, yeah.
I think this one was. And you have people come in there, of course. Now they have the tents out front that you have to go through, and you have to get your temperature taken or whatever to go in. And of course, you need to have a mask on. I was one of those people that, I'm trying to be a jerk, but sorry, my mask flew off on the roller coaster. But you have in there people that want the guest experience in two very different fashions. Number one, you have the people that they're just tired of being cooped up in the house and they want to get out and take the masks off and go back to normal. Then you have the people that just still want to get out of the house, but they don't want people nearby them. And so
especially in California. You couldn't have said it better. There was an absolute dichotomy in the state of California as to whether or not we should be open, whether or not you should allow. I mean, we had vaccine mandates, So you had to show vaccination cards in many cases. So I mean, it was a very everything you said is true. It was trying to be able to manage the business, manage the guest experience was a lot of challenge, and it was really difficult to make everyone happy. But I would say, if there was a silver lining there, I would say that the true enthusiasts of the park, which was pretty much everyone in San Diego. A lot of people in San Diego love
Mhm.
SeaWorld. They were pretty understanding. I mean, remember, it
Right.
does seem like a lifetime ago that, you remembered when you opened back up, everyone was understaffed. I mean, there were
Yeah.
a lot
Yeah.
of signs on doors. I remember going into restaurants where people say, please be kind to our staff. They are working really hard. We
Mhm.
don't have enough people. So I would say for the most part, you got to see the good, the best, and the worst part of humanity in many cases.
Right.
Right? So,
Yeah, people tend to be impatient despite their best efforts, or
right,
sometimes their worst efforts.
right.
Uh,
Well, that was a time and place that let's just leave that in the past. Go to happier times,
yes.
because it seems that right after that you went to where you're at currently with Five Star
Okay.
Parks and Attractions, and came in as their inaugural. Am I saying that right? Inaugural CEO as part of a private company, and you took a three location. If I read all this correctly, a three location company and expanded it, at least to my notes. That time was 27 parks, but I hear you say 28, and you're getting ready to go forward. So how did that all come about?
That's a great question. So when I joined the company, I was hired by our inaugural private equity group, our financial sponsor, who had an idea that the traditional large format family entertainment centers, especially in vacation markets like Branson, Pigeon Forge, Myrtle Beach, etc., had second and third generation owners without a great succession plan. And so the idea was to help look for parks that have been around a long time with a great reputation and great management teams, and put them together and to be able to benefit from the corporate scale that has been achieved in the larger theme park and hotel environment, etc. We scaled incredibly rapidly. About halfway through, we kind of pivoted our strategy, due to significant inclement weather, which had our revenue in some cases going to almost zero. And so, effectively, in revenue to zero, what in periods of inclement weather, right? So, in January and February in Branson, difficult to get people to go on the Branson Ferris wheel when it's minus 20 outside, right? So, we started looking at businesses as a hedge. What was then kind of a newly emerging concept of the indoor amusement park, right? And
Mm-hmm.
two pioneers came to mind: Malibu Jacks, which is right in your backyard, and Scene 75, which is also in your backyard.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were lucky enough to strike a deal with the owners of Malibu Jacks. We acquired Malibu Jacks, and then within a year, Scene 75 right behind it. So our company is presently structured into three discrete groups: the traditional family entertainment center, the outdoor micro amusement park, Branson, Pigeon Forge, etc., and then the indoor theme park that's like we talked about, Malibu Jack, Scene 75, kind of 120,000 square feet
Mm-hmm.
indoors.
Yeah, Scene 75, in particular, the one in Dayton, Ohio, is one of the, I mean, it is humongous. It
Humongous.
is really,
Yeah.
it's a theme park. It's not in many ways, like it still feels like a family entertainment center in some ways, but it's, you walk in, you see like the size you expect the whole building to be, and then you turn the corner and there's another area legitimately doubly as big. When you're talking about operating a facility of this size, is it more similar to the way your SeaWorld, your theme park is going to operate, or does it still function more like a family entertainment center?
It's a good question. I mean, I think we borrow from both, right? From scale and you know of the theme parks, how to be able to maximize throughput through our rides and attractions, certainly in peak periods in our food and beverage operations.
Yeah.
But I would say, it's a category kind of in and of itself unique. I don't know that necessarily you can borrow from either. You have to really build your own playbook,
Yeah.
especially because on a weekday you can have hundreds or low 1,000 people come through the location, and on the weekends you can have literally quadruple or more that number. And so being able to manage labor and flex your scheduling and operating hours, etc. I mean, I would say each of our parks has its own unique playbook, because we
Yeah.
really don't have any. I mean, other than maybe Malibu Jacks, Lexington, and Louisville, they're very similar. Pretty much all of our parks, other than that, have a unique nature to them, which makes managing each of those parks an entirely unique endeavor. Unlike some of our cousins at Dave and Buster's or Main Event, which are pretty
Sure.
much the same size, pretty much the same attraction mix, our parks are pretty much all different.
Yeah.
So in your your biography that I've read, it has you listed as a disruptor. Now you took over a park as a CEO at 3 locations, and it really transformed. There's no way that you can possibly onboard all those and everybody be at all different levels of need to be brought up to the standards of 5-star parks and attractions for how you guys do things. But how would you how is the process of transforming everybody from operating from their self to how you do things? As I know with Scene 75 in particular, I don't know Jonas Sandler personally. I know his name. I know he started from, I believe, a little location in Inglewood. I could be wrong about that, but they had a tornado destroy parts of their building in Dayton, and they had just barely got back online before the pandemic hit.
That's right.
And they were open before it happened. But so bringing a place like that, which is very large, very regional, to get them up to where you needed them to be, how big of a process was that?
Well, I would say each of these parks is an evolving opportunity, meaning like it's I don't know that you ever get there if you're going to be competitive, right? Wherever there is, I think we're constantly looking to evolve our parks. I think the question more around culture is, how do you take, call it 7 major acquisitions in 24 to 30 months, and make each of them feel like they're part of a larger 5-star culture, and transition away from their individual identity, right? And I think the answer to that question is, we look for great brands that resonate very well in their communities, that have got great teams, right? I mean, when you're buying a company, yes, you are buying assets, but in most cases, we look for organizations where we're able to onboard the teams.
Yeah.
So our goal is not necessarily to come in and just change everything and, hey, we know how to do it better. The idea is that we can provide opportunities to these organizations to empower the general managers to be able to provide back office support and systems that are at a higher level than a typical mom and pop organization could do. A lot of insights, centralized marketing, centralized accounting, centralized finance, centralized business intelligence, and then use that to be able to sort of light the initiatives on fire that most of these GMs and regional leaders and up have been wanting to do for years. And so if you look at our organizational structure, our org chart is full of people that came with the acquisitions. So it's not like we bought Scene 75 and terminated everybody and put our own people in place. That's not it at all. In fact, we took the very best parts of Scene 75 and tried to implement, because we had the teams that stayed on board with us, tried to implement the best parts at Malibu Jacks. And the best things we did at Malibu Jacks, implement that at Scene 75. We tried to be able to, make, like I said, all of the back office, take those responsibilities away from the general managers, who we want to spend more time on the floor pleasing the guests. So I think and then obviously culture, right? I think we do a lot. We over communicate. We meet with all of what we call our SLT members, senior leadership team, including our GMs, twice a week, every Monday, every Thursday. We're on calls. We're talking about our culture. We're talking about business performance. We're talking about our core values. We're challenging those leaders. If they see something that's inconsistent with the core values, bring them to our attention. but let's talk about them. So there's just a lot of communication. We get together. We initiated almost right away an annual conference where we bring everybody together and spend several days talking about our goals and vision, to be able to make sure that everybody's sort of playing from the same sheet of music. So we spent a lot of time talking about, the cultural fit. And I've been surprised actually at how quickly people have bought into the broader 5-star vision.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. And it makes some sense to me that they would be willing to buy in when you're so obviously committed to keeping the things that have made these parks special, the things that have made you interested in acquiring them, right?
Right.
Keeping the soul into that entertainment center. In the, sort of theme park world right now, obviously there is two major mergers that have just happened with Six Flags and Cedar Fair merging, and with Hershend acquiring Palace Entertainment. And I think right there we're in the very early stages of both, of course, but you can kind of see a difference in the way that Hershend has acquired parks that were really important to the local communities that they were in, whereas Cedar Fair now has merged with Six Flags, which is this kind of operates in this blanket sort of way, it's just a different way. Not necessarily one is better or one is worse, but they're definitely different. And I totally understand from the perspective of the team members how it would be easier to buy that big picture vision if you feel like the ideas that you've been creating this whole time are now being valued by your new organization.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, there's so many differences to those transactions. I mean, number one, Hershen's private. Number two,
right.
Six Flags Cedar Fair is a public company. Six Flags Cedar Fair, that merger happened at a period of time when I think we're a little maybe more optimistic about what was happening with the consumer environment than now, where Hershend bought Palace at a time where we're a little more pessimistic about the consumer environment. So I think that there's a bit less pressure on the Hershend Palace, acquisition, because they can take their time and it's private and they don't have, the decision makers or the shareholders, right?
Yeah.
So I think in the public environment, boy, there's a lot of pressure there. I mean, there's a lot of efficiencies that need to be, put in place, and so there's some pretty drastic changes that have been made, but I still have a lot of faith in those management teams, and think that the byproduct of both of those mergers will be better, stronger organizations for sure.
I'm with you. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, John, I want to go down a different path because you have with working with family entertainment centers, you have a front row seat to how technology has changed everything, and during your time with 5-Star, AI has become huge. And it continues. I think it's doubling every day almost. But how has that changed? Just a digital interactive technology changing so quickly. How has that changed how the family entertainment centers interact? Because most of the attractions, places like Scene 75, you're probably about a 60-40 split between what is interactive with your hands, with your eyes, and the others just doing things. So how has that transformed how you do business, and what does the future look like with it?
That's a really good question. I mean, I don't know that AI has been as disruptive as it will be in our industry, right? I mean, I'm very excited about the future of AI in our business, but I would say right now, AI has been more of an administrative back office sort of implementation. For example, I think marketing has been revolutionized by AI. Because specifically we operate so many brands, it's difficult to, as an example, when you create an ad, to constantly speak with the brand voice of each of the different ads, especially when you're rolling out 6 LTOs times 7 brands. That's 42 different ad campaigns in a year with a pretty relatively small marketing team. AI, you plug all of the information about your brand into like a Chat GPT business edition, and you effectively teach AI what your brand look and feel and voice is. Then you immediately can stamp out with precision ad campaigns rapidly that have the look and the feel of a particular brand, and it's done at lightning speed. So I think AI has already shown its productivity improvement in terms of how we handle advertising and marketing. I absolutely believe that AI and just very quickly will help us determine where to put games in the game rooms, how to price games from a I don't know about variable pricing. I mean, I think that, bottom line, people walk into a center with a certain amount of money to spend in their pocket, but, it will help us create maximum value for our guests relative to games and how we're thinking about games and rides and attractions. So I think it's just the absolute tip of the iceberg on where AI can take us. But, I think, some of the back office solutions like accounting and finance will be disrupted with AI, especially accounts payable, accounts receivable. But relative to the guest experience in AI, I think we're just at the front doors of where AI is going to take us.
Do you think that in the ways in which AI can make the white collar worker in particular more just efficient, like in the economic sense, do you think that has the potential to lead to a loss in jobs that can be felt on the macroeconomic scale in the attractions industry?
Again, I think in administrative jobs globally, right? I mean, I think, it's, you can't say it won't change the dynamic of like
Sure.
a law firm. I mean, I can put a draft agreement together, or handle non-disclosure agreements, or anything that we would run in seconds versus days, right? So yeah, I think that there's an absolute there will somewhat will be disruptive, but does that mean like we're going to have in aggregate a loss of jobs in our parks? I'm not ready to commit to that, right?
Yeah.
Will it help us turn transactional jobs into interactional jobs? So in other words, does that mean that the guest will be the beneficiary of AI? I hope so.
Yeah.
I mean, we're in high touch businesses where hospitality and customer service is really important, and it can be a differentiator. So no, I don't think we're at the spectrum, looking at the spectrum of AI, at least at this moment, where we're talking about an absolute reduction in force because of AI.
Yeah.
Well, you talk about it's a high touch industry, and this I want to make a pivot unless there's something else we want to talk about in regards to that. But as far as guest experience, I like talking about guest experience and just the whole wall of what's the word I'm looking for? Storyboard of where the experience comes from, the point that you think about going to a place to the time that you walk out the exit, or maybe even drive away. In your mind, in your head, what is the ideal guest journey that you think from the time someone's thinking about coming to a location to the time that they leave? What sort of things should they experience?
Right. I mean, so as an example, one of the things that we've put in is a position, call it a greeter, we call it a tour guide at our Malibu Jacks location, because we want a guest to have high touch immediately. When people come into one of our large centers, like you're talking about, 150,000 square foot center as an example, people walk in and they get sort of a sensory overload with how much there is to do. And if they've never been to one of our centers before, they have absolutely no way to experience the park. First of all, how do I load a card? How much should I put on my card? Talk to me about the deals that you have. Should I buy a time play wristband, or should I just load up $50 on a card? Or can I eat here? Should I eat early in my experience? Do I have to wait in line for things? I mean, there's just a lot of questions that people can have. So we've tried to answer those questions up front by posting a tour guide at the center. And, while, it's funny, in many cases, we've tried to separate transaction versus interaction relative to consumption. And so, as I mentioned, a lot of family entertainment centers, when you walk in, will have a bank of kiosks that you can come in and load your money and swipe a card. And, we've actually found that while that is very helpful in terms of speeding up the, initial transaction, we've often had people move into products that they wouldn't have otherwise. So they walked up to a guest and asked the questions that I just talked about, right? So, being able to put a tour guide up front so that they can understand the best way to enjoy themselves based upon their user case. That's been a really big, important fact for us. We've looked to innovation in food and beverage, as an example. So we've just opened a center in Dallas, area called North Richland Hills, just on Monday, and it's the first one of our locations that doesn't have a formal bar. We've used the Pour My Beer technology, where you, on your play card, you can walk up to a wall and use your same play card to activate the beer wall, assuming that you're 21, of course, and have immediate access to beverage, right? Which is located right by the bowling lane. So, we believe that trying to be able to be overly helpful, especially at the point of consumption, and giving guests what they want so they can get back to playing. I mean, that's the great thing about us, is that, it's not, people don't come to have a wild amount of interface with our teams, but when they do, they want it to be meaningful. So we've tried to be able to leverage all our touch points to be meaningful experiences.
So the new facility you opened up in Dallas was ground up, all 5-star, or it was an acquisition?
No, it was we took over an old at-home furniture building. It's 137,000 square feet. And we transformed it into an indoor playground. I mean, it's really fun. We've got a drop tower and multiple indoor rides, spinning roller coaster, and super, one of our best go-kart tracks. Super fun, and 100 plus arcade games, indoor laser tag and mini golf, 2 different mini golf courses. So there's a lot of fun, a lot of fun to be had in that location.
How long did the process take of we're gonna find this at-home building? We've got the building. What was the timeline from there to Monday opening day?
That's call it 18 months, about, maybe a little longer. But we had to, we look at real estate all the time, right? So for this particular building we bought, so the, by the time that we found the building, negotiated in the building, closed on the building, got the permit, the designs, it got the building permitted, it was, call it 18 months anyway. From the day we took the keys to opening was about 7 months. So we were able to move fast because we were really prepared from the day we took the keys. So really unbelievably quickly. And it's really, truly an exceptional park.
Wow. That's great.
As far as how the consumer itself and their expectations, what have you seen over the last couple of years, I guess, since you've been there, and maybe even before, we'll say pre-pandemic versus now? How have the consumer behaviors changed? What are the expectations like now?
They've changed seasonally. This has been the most rapid change of customer behavior that I've experienced in my lifetime. I mean, we remember you were in pandemic, right? And then you had markets like Branson, Missouri, which said, we're not closing. And so while everybody else in the country was closing, I don't know if you remember the early CNN news reports of the pool parties that were happening in, the areas like Branson and Pigeon Forge specifically. And so they were mobbed, right? So they had some of their best years during COVID, right? Then sort of post-pandemic, everybody sort of unilaterally had enough of staying inside, with their loved ones, right? Getting trapped inside, and needed to get out and see people again and experience everything that they could, it seemed like, right? And so you had a lot of businesses like our out of home just skyrocketed. I'll bet almost every business in our industry again had banner years. And those banner years sort of happened kind of through. We had a very strong 2023 year, and then we saw a lot of pullback last year. We just saw a lot of. I mean, inflation was record high. The cost of goods and services, and our ability to. I mean, pricing on everything went up, right? I mean, it was fairly unilateral, and so I think really started hitting people's pocketbook. And you started to see a lot of discounting happening last year. And it was unclear. You see traditional pullback in an election year. Pretty much, if you look back kind of over history, election years are years where people, reboot, right? So we weren't necessarily sure whether or not the election was going to happen, the world was going to effectively pop back or what. And I think you've seen, while we've managed to avoid a recession, you can't ignore that $9 eggs.
Right.
I mean, just a couple of years ago, we were talking about the price of gas. Just gas, raising gas prices, determining how far people were willing to drive to go to parks. Now you're talking about gas and eggs and liquor and all kinds of other food and housing and utilities and insurance. I mean, all these categories are up for the average consumer. And so people are having to look at areas where their money's going to go the furthest. And so if we've had a particular area of focus this year, it's how do we deliver maximum value to our customer so that we can keep the customer coming to us instead of going to a competitor.
Yeah.
So how's that? Honestly, how's that been going? And actually, I have another question before you do that. Not to get too far away from it. You made mention that places like in Branson and Pigeon Forge said they never closed. I know that you're exaggerating a little bit. When did they reopen?
I mean, Branson and Pigeon Forge were largely open. I mean, there were sections of the United States which just said we're not enforcing shelter in place, and so our family entertainment centers. I know that some of the bigger parks like Dollywood and Silver Dollar City certainly had restrictions, but a lot of people drove to Branson and Pigeon Forge during the pandemic. And so we had unusual success in those markets. So they never really shut down the way that California did, for example. I mean, right here I live in Charlotte, North Carolina. And as you know, Charlotte is on the border between North and South Carolina. It's another great example where Charlotte was pretty shut down, but South Carolina, wide open. So you just drive across the border into South Carolina and go to a restaurant almost the entire pandemic, right? So, I think it's pandemic exposure was very, kind of hit or miss relative to how strict they were with their policies during the pandemic.
Yeah, I went to Branson, Missouri in June of 2020, in fact, because it was, in Cincinnati, nothing was open. And we went to Silver Dollar City in early June of 2020, and it was still kicking, kind of like normal, but with reduced crowds. So for sure.
What I never understood during that time is Cedar Fair, I believe at the time, I could be wrong. It's been a couple of years. I've slept a couple of times, but I remember the entertainment, the attractions industry went through a lot of litigation with the state of Ohio to push some of that through so that they could reopen. And that was granted in the month of May. I'm sorry, the month of early May, but it was until July 11th before Kings Island finally reopened. And maybe it had something to do with staffing.
Yeah.
But it was, and I do know that a lot of the attendance at the places lagged until the following year. And it seemed like even when Kings Island opened for the 2021 season, it lagged a little bit because they still had the mask mandate in the state of Ohio. And it seemed like as soon as that fell off, poof, people returned.
Well, we also, again, as I mentioned before, don't forget, we were taking reservations in the big parks. So it wasn't even possible. I mean, we had to work with the government in California to be able to determine that, I don't remember the exact percentages, but a certain percentage of our max attendance. So our max attendance at SeaWorld California when we opened was effectively like a busy, spring day, not a summer day, right? So it was there was no way to get any meaningful attendance. It was just a way to reopen and start generating revenue and getting people back to work and starting to rebuild the culture and things like that initially. So yeah, it took a long time to really ramp back up.
Yeah.
I'm sorry I keep going back to that, but it's just a fascinating time. I think people who were in leadership positions during that time, I mean, really, you had no way to prepare for anything for it because it was just the last time it happened was almost 100 years ago.
That's right.
And everything is pretty much innovated since then, but it was at that time where everything just came crashing down and you have to crash course and make things up as you go. But as we see right now, where things have for the most part recovered, I don't think there's any hangover from COVID still at the moment. But where do you see the future of family entertainment going?
It's a great question. I mean, I think that I think family entertainment naturally evolves based around consumer demand. So, I mean, I think that the industry is pretty innovative. At present, I mean, you've seen just in the last decade, really, the advent of the more adult-friendly, kid-capable attractions that are more bar-focused, like concepts like Pins Mechanical, and a lot of these single attraction venues, like the Putt Shacks of the world and the Puttery and
Sure.
Pop Stroke, and so I think that there's been a lot of really cool innovation where family entertainment is appealing to a much broader audience, right? So yeah, I think you'll continue to see basic ride innovations. Frankly, I would say the innovation in our space maybe has innovated in some ways even slower. I thought that there was than I would have expected. So a lot of the digital innovations that I would have expected coming with relative to virtual reality and things like that, they've not really taken off inside our centers. I mean, the old traditional game, if anything, look at how many of the traditional arcades, like barcades, are popping back up, where people playing the old school games, right? So,
Yeah.
I mean, your guess is as good as mine in a way, but I think one thing I can tell you is we spent a lot of time thinking about it, and that's part of our indoor theme park philosophy. Is what we definitely design our Malibu Jacks and Scene 75 properties, so that if there is a major innovation and or something like laser tag, let's say, becomes less attractive, then we could take laser tag out as an example and put in another rider attraction or whatever the new thing is, and continue to evolve our centers. So the question you asked really is kind of at the heart of our development strategy, so that we always make sure that we're able to continue to evolve. We're not just a one-shot pony. For example, if go-karting were to fall out of favor, we can take the go-karting out and replace it. We're not building our whole concept around go-karting.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have a question about go-karting specifically, because in my family, we're going down to Pigeon Forge. We're going to hit a couple of your parks, so we're down there next month.
Excellent.
But you also talked about there's a indoor component to the go-karts that you have, I believe, in your Dallas location. Now, it's been a while since I've been on a go-kart track inside as an indoor attraction. The electric go-karts, I'm talking several years, maybe even a decade. The go-karts that were ran by electric were not that fun. What is the difference from someone who likes to intentionally knock into people and to kind of make my weight felt on the track? I can be a jerk on the track, I guess. But has the electric technology caught up a little bit with where the gasoline engines are?
Oh, yes. I mean, I would say that driving an electric go-kart is akin to saying, going from a race car, a gas race car, to a Tesla, right? I mean, the performance of an electric go-kart, I mean, they're really tremendous. They feel great. They feel like driving a really exciting race car. And a lot of the technology here in electric was pioneered in Europe, right? Where they actually have like a Formula One E version, right?
Yeah.
So I would say the technology in electric go-karting is very exciting. I mean, all you've got to do is go to Annie Andretti's in America. They're really super fun tracks. RPM Racing has a lot of fun tracks. We tend to stay more concession oriented. I mean, those are fully helmeted, experiences where you check in and have a check-in time and go through a briefing. Our version of karting, while they're still really fast, super fun electric karts, they're more concession oriented. Our goal is to appeal to 2 to 92, not in karting, call it 8 or 9 to 90. But yeah, we have a very broad audience, and I would say they're every bit as fun as riding the gasoline karts, in my opinion.
Okay, so talking about the future of Five Star in particular, what kind of expansion, if you can speak to any of that, do you see as the future of Five Star?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I'm very excited about the expansion of Five Star. I believe that we've really shown what we can do, particularly in our new center development strategy. We've been really working on our Malibu Jacks prototype. The brand new Malibu Jacks in Dallas, Texas, super exciting. We're working on, how can we do that in a bit smaller spaces? It's a very substantial space. So I would say we're looking at facilities all across the country. We believe we have a market to build, hundreds of these in key markets, over the years. we're looking at boxes that are kind of 80,000 square foot and up, which should give us a bigger sort of footprint. There's still a pretty major commercial real estate issue with a lot of big businesses. Just yesterday, At Home Furniture announced that they're closing, several dozen stores. There's just a lot of opportunity. We're keeping our eyes open at where the big boxes are and the right trade areas for us. I think in general, there are a lot of other exciting concepts, as I've talked about, that are coming out for adults. I'd keep an eye on, Andretti's. That's a really cool concept. As I mentioned, if you like racing, tremendous amount of fun. RPM Racing out in New York, they're really great. I've been a big fan of Pins Mechanical, as I've mentioned all three of these on the podcast here already, but they're really neat. So I think that there are a lot of exciting new concepts around the corner that I've had an opportunity to preview, which are coming out. So I would say the future is very bright for the out-of-home entertainment environment. And then, kind of circling back to the earlier conversation about, I'm really excited to see what innovation happens with the Six Flags Cedar Fair merger. And then, Hershen's just such a great company that, I really believe that, they're going to be able to spread their footprint across a lot of attractions that are beloved in their communities. All these things have me really excited. I'm going to get out and get back on the road and start visiting theme parks at a higher level. So pretty excited to see how things shake out over the next couple of years.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for being generous with your time, hopping on the Attractions
Absolutely.
Group podcast and giving us a little insight into your world. We really appreciate you, and we would hope to maybe one day have you back on.
Please do. I'd love to. It's been a great conversation, and things are moving so fast that we'll have a whole new set of content next time we chat.
Yeah,
That's right.
Well, John, thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
So that was exciting.
That was. Previous to our recording, I was talking to John a little bit about the parks that Five Star has, and he was asking me some questions about the different ones, and I had to contend that I'm familiar with the names of some of the brands like Season 75 and some of the tracks that he spoke of down in Pigeon Forge, but I'm not always familiar with the parent company name. I had no idea until really looking into the background how many parks they really had.
Yeah.
And as it turns out, the stuff that's online is incorrect because they had 27, and I believe he spoke of between 28 and 31. So that's amazing. And the fact that they grew from 3 parks to where they are in a short amount of time. I believe he started there in 2022, January 2022. So we're not even 3.5 years into that, and they've expanded that much.
And he mentioned the word hundreds for the future.
Yes.
So you just never know. And I mean, I'm with him. I think in entertainment in general, I do think there's a lot of untapped markets just here locally in the United States. If you think about a park like the fact that Coney Island, Kings Island, and Stricker's Grove have basically all existed as separate theme parks for 50 years. And then you think about the city of Nashville not having a single park, or the city of Charleston not having a single park, or, we need to be careful to build a park so close to in Detroit because Michigan's Adventure and Cedar Point are both there. Do you? Because it's people want to be entertained. People want to have fun and make experience and memories with their family. So I do think there's definitely some saturation that can yet happen.
Yeah. And during the interview, and I apologize for this again, I didn't mean to keep going back to how things were during the COVID years, but from someone who I had a vendor side business for the attractions industry through the thick of the pandemic, and I saw a lot of things change. The demands for what we were doing from an interactive technology standpoint in, I'll say, February of 2020 versus what really emerged in, I'll say, February 2022, they're completely different. And technology does not age well on the shelf because there's people with a lot more money than me that can sit in the background and continue to innovate. Well, we have this time to work on things. We can innovate and do this, and do this, and do this. And everything changed. And we'll have to do an episode on that. Get somebody on that just really wants to talk about the challenges that were presented in unique ways and how they overcame it during the pandemic. Because it's a fascinating conversation. I didn't keep going back to it because I wanted to go forward, because they had a great story to talk about with what he's done with 5 Star Parks. But at the same time, he was a park president at probably the worst possible time that anyone could be a park president.
Yeah, probably. Probably. Now, I did want to mention, unrelated to the COVID, but very related to the 5-star. Scene 75 in Dayton has
Mhm.
A roller coaster called, oh my gosh, if I pull this, that's crazy. I think it's called Tsunami.
Okay.
So somebody RCDB this. I just need to say with to everyone in the world, that thing is insane. Okay, it's like
Okay.
a little SPF Visa spinner. You don't expect much, but
Okay.
holy moly, it has. It's you go up a lift hill, right, and it's a spinning
Yeah.
coaster, and then you go, little tiny little drop, and then you kind of
Mhm.
go around this turn, and then you hit a pretty big drop. And the way that you come out of the turn and then into the drop, pretty much every time you drop, you are going to be spinning, like mid
Yeah.
spin. And this drop gives ejector airtime. It is ridiculous. So yes, I just needed to say that.
Well, no, I was at Scene 75 I'll say pre tornado. As I
Okay.
said, there was a tornado that came through, I believe, in spring of 2019 that damaged a large portion of the building, and it didn't reopen. At least the ride part of it didn't reopen until several months later. I don't think it was a
Mm,
year, but it was a long time after that. But they expanded a lot of their ride offerings during that time.
mm.
Is this the roller coaster you're speaking of? If you've been to the IAPA Expo, and I don't know if you were there last year, but they usually have a roller coaster that may be
Yes.
close to what you're describing. Is it that one?
Yeah, it's the same manufacturer. They
Okay.
have like a double version, and that's what the
Okay.
one at at Tsunami or whatever at 1875 is. I don't know if the one at the Expo is the single version or the
Okay.
double, but it is the same. It's effectively the same ride. Yeah. But yes. And one more thing about family entertainment, we in Cincinnati. If you're a Cincinnati local, you may remember Entertainment Junction. There was an AGP
Absolutely.
episode about the closure of Entertainment Junction as well,
Hmm.
but that's been replaced with a new kind of, I think, very interesting, let's call it kid capable, adult focused family entertainment center in the Pickle Lodge. Have you seen, heard, been to the Pickle Lodge? It's pickleball
Is that in
courts.
Westchester?
Yeah, it is on Tylersville Road.
Okay.
I mean, it's the same building as Entertainment Junction. It's yeah, I mean, yeah, it's pickleball courts, but then it's
Okay.
of course also a bar and TVs and some of the things like the Foaling warehouse, if you've ever been foaling anywhere around the Midwest. So yeah, I think that's another interesting place. I think he's talking about
Yeah.
these kind of single activity centers, and
Right.
they're a lot more fad based in some sense, because if Foaling or if pickleball does start to decline, it's a lot harder for them to pivot than for a Scene 75 to pivot. But it is interesting to think about sports as a part of family entertainment.
I've heard the pickleball's for people that can't play tennis. I can't play either,
I
so
guess I think that's true. I'm a big pickleball hater. I mean, I'll play because it's better than not playing anything. But
yeah.
yeah, let's go for a race instead. That would be my bet, my vote.
Well, cool.
Cool.
Another great interview. We
Yes.
do have one coming up next Tuesday. Well, we're recording on Tuesday. A gentleman by the name of Jim Landre, who is the chief operating officer of Dream Factory Agency in Orlando, right down the street from you somewhere, I'm sure. And we're going to be getting into a lot of things AI and how that's changing the marketing and where he feels is going that direction and how that interacts with some parks that may be in your backyard as well.
Cool. Let's do it. Well, hit
All
the
right.
subscribe button so you don't miss that episode of the Attractions Group podcast. And until then, have a great week, and we'll see you then.